Hello, everybody. My name is Natalie Yeadon, and I'm the co-owner and managing director at Impetus Digital. And for those of you who don't know Impetus Digital, we're a company that has been around for the last 11 years, and we have built some of the best-in-class asynchronous and synchronous virtual collaboration tools for life science companies to be able to do a series of collaborative work with their customers, be it physicians, payers, patients, or allied healthcare providers. We do things like advisory boards, investigator meetings, co-author working groups, and quite recently, unfortunately, because of COVID-19, we've been helping to virtualize a lot of in-person meetings, internally based, even things like POA brand rollouts and different team initiatives. So we believe at Impetus Digital that everything starts with an idea. And with that idea starts a conversation. So we feel that by being able to initiate these conversations, these big, hairy, audacious plans and ideas, we can all work together to deliberately and positively impact and disrupt healthcare. So with all of that said, these webinar fireside chats is the foray into us starting to have some of these conversations, being able to speak with people like Stephany that I have on the line today to start thinking about some of these ideas, these innovations, these creative ways of being and thinking in the healthcare space so we can truly do something that is going to be important and compelling for patients and healthcare stakeholders alike. So with all of that said, I want to introduce, I'm so happy and honored to have somebody that I have really sincerely looked up to over the last decade that I have known Stephany. This is Stephany Lapierre. She is the founder and CEO of Tealbook. This is one of the most highly coveted supply chain thought leaders that are around. And I am so blessed that I've known her for so long. And she's one of the most influential minds in the emerging data technology space. She has been recognized as one of the top 100 most influential women in supply chain, and her company Tealbook has been named as a top 50 company to watch in Spend Matters and won the Cool Vendor Award by Gartner. Prior to Tealbook, Stephany spent 10 years building a strategic sourcing and procurement consulting firm, and I'm going to want her to explain that a little bit because that's actually how I knew her, focusing on large-scale sourcing optimization projects. And given her experience and her visibility into the data issues that were crippling procurement, she has made it her personal mission to deliver a trusted source of supplier data to an ever-growing eProcurement space. So very exciting what she has developed since that consulting firm. And currently, Tealbook is the only big data company that provides a self-enriching and self-maintaining mechanism to fix enterprise supplier data, basically from now until forever. So super excited to have you, Stephany. Thank you for joining me today.
And thank you for having me.
That's awesome. So let's actually start from the beginning. For those of you who are not here, Stephany and I were kind of pitter-pattering back and forth because we've known each other for a while. Again, I have been watching Stephany and her growth and the huge expansion and transformation of her company over the last 10 years. Stephany, maybe you can just sort of start off a little bit about kind of where you came from. I know you're originally in pharma like I was, starting off with Matchbook and just kind of taking us through the voyage very quickly about what brought you to Tealbook and where you are today.
Yeah, thank you, Natalie. So I started my career in pharma. I was working for an agency, and then I worked in sales, did some product management, and then I had a short stint at IMS Health. And so on the data side, touched sort of patient data, and then started an agency, a Canadian agency in the US, and so did that for a few years. And I loved the strategy and the business development and innovating with customers. But what I saw was a gap is when it comes to innovation, when you are owning a brand and you're looking for innovation, it's really hard to find. And so I started a Matchbook with the premise to help brands differentiate themselves through innovation, and realize very quickly that innovation does often comes from suppliers, from companies that you can partner with that can bring innovation and brainstorm, either because they have a lot of different expertise or ideas, or they're solving very different problems for other companies. And I developed a process through this business that I had where we would identify business problems and then find the suppliers that could, generate better outcomes. And that was very successful. And that looked very much like strategic sourcing. Beknownst to me, I didn't really know procurement, didn't care much for procurement at the time or empathize with it because it was against my goal. I was trying to spend money to be able to generate value for my business, and procurement to me tend to be something that got in the way. But what I saw through this process of finding innovation and working with teams is that you could really offload a lot of the mechanism, right, to be able to get to finding the right providers, to getting the best possible outcome, to making sure that you are partnering with the best companies and getting the most value. And if you could do this more efficiently, there was a real opportunity there to help the business focus on what they do best. And so that was the premise of my consulting firm. Really loved what I was doing, loved to see the outcome for the brand. And then, at the time, strategic sourcing was becoming a function of procurement. And so a lot of my clients in big pharma really liked the process. And so our process was 6 weeks, which most RFPs are it can be up to 6 months. And so we had developed this really efficient process that our clients were asking to come in and help bridge the gap between the business and what procurement was trying to accomplish. So we became very consultative to bring more efficiencies and more value out of the procurement function so that the business empathized better, but also procurement aligned better with the business goals. And then that translated into becoming basically a consulting firm that provided, strategic procurement insight and help teams. Now, my business shifted to a lot of my contacts went to small biotech companies that were typically pre-commercial, got a lot of capital, had to, commercialize their first asset globally. And suddenly a lot of these executives came from large pharma and realized how much actually was needed to outsource and how difficult. And when in certain therapeutic space, you may need second, third, even fourth source suppliers. And I remember the analogy I gave is like, I would get calls from clients who needed grout. Like sort of, when you're redoing your kitchen, you buy a kitchen or you're redoing it, you realize there's a lot of little decisions and the timing of those decisions. And if you don't do it well, there's a lot of gaps along the way that your team will struggle with, a lot of duplication of effort and a lot of bad behaviors, right? People are coming in so fast. We had companies who grew from 30 to 300 employees in 6 months. So people come in with their own relationship, their own way of doing things. And if you don't put policies and processes really at the beginning and enable right information to flow and people to make decisions, you're going to run into some really big problems. And most biotech companies that I know, have run into this where they don't think about procurement early enough. And then there's a lot of education that needs to happen with CFOs. And then they think about procurement almost too late. And it's really hard for the organization. It's really hard for whoever's coming in to build procurement. And so if you can do this really early on, there's a huge operational and financial efficiencies of building a really good procurement function early on. And good procurement means transparent, enabling, scalable, and not get in the way, but enable people to make decisions. So that was my passion. And what I saw through that process is that we would run really fast into the same problems that large biotech companies who had quote unquote sophisticated procurement functions and systems. And what I found out is the more people come in, the more tools you're adding to your technology stack as a way to, address contracts and address POs and address relationships and audits. And suddenly you end up with a lot of different systems, and it makes it really difficult for data to be updated across system. And suddenly you end up with, hundreds or thousands of suppliers with a lot of different records that need to be collected, need to maintain, need to be validated, and no unified view of those relationships that anyone across the organization can access. So you have information in siloed. It creates a lot of problems for companies, a lot of risks, a lot of duplication of efforts, a lot of duplication of suppliers, a lot of duplication of contracts, and the list goes on. And I saw this as being, one of the big problems for procurement as procurement continues to evolve, is I just saw that there was one big false assumption in my view, is that they were adopting software as a means to fix data, and software was not fixing the data, it was actually contributing to the data problem, and I wanted to fix that. So that's how, 5 years ago, I decided to put all the pieces together and turn my life upside down to build a technology big data company.
And it's really, really interesting because, again, as you were mentioning earlier, building a consulting firm is very different than building a technology firm, and all of that process. So what's really interesting here is what you've just described is a lot of the traditional ways of thinking and doing that typical procurement departments, especially in the very traditional pharma, life sciences companies, there's sort of methodologies, and it's the tried and tested, and it's very traditional. Suddenly we're hitting COVID-19, and supply chains are getting wonky and crazy. And again, when we talk about supply chain, there's a whole myriad of things, including supply chain for components to manufacturing medications. And we know, I've heard a lot of stories about how things have kind of gone bonkers that way. So we're hitting traditional with suddenly being pushed up against the wall with, oh no, what do we do now? So maybe you can talk a little bit about some of those challenges pre-COVID and now post-COVID of hitting processes and protocols that are a little bit antiquated, and some of the methodologies that you've used, including artificial intelligence, to get some people, to overcome some of that.
Mm-hmm. I think we had some really good economic times in the last few years, right? And that leads to a lot of good ideas and good projects and a lot of thoughts around digital transformation and adoption of software and building a use case, and it takes time. And suddenly something like COVID happens and you're now scrambling. And for most procurement supply chain team, we're actually quite paralyzed because they didn't have access to the information fast enough to respond to market changes. It's one thing to know that there's risk. There's one thing to know that there's disruptions, but where do you have, one, you need to know, and you don't always have visibility into what's happening with your existing supplier base, let alone your suppliers, where there's a lot of risk there as well. And then to be able to have access to the information to respond, to be able to do something about it. And so I think what we saw is an accelerated sense of urgency around visibility to your data. Right now, how we've been able to help teams, and so maybe I'll take a step back and explain what we do as a technology, is we aggregate information across hundreds of millions of websites and different sources to create a universal supplier record for every B2B company in the world. And that universal supplier record continuously gets more complete. And the more complete the information, the more insightful, the more useful, the more trusted. And that supplier record can be plugged into any system that has a supplier profile. And we also have an interface that's quite easy to use. It's very LinkedIn-like, as people would compare it, to be able to allow buyers to also access the information through our own interface. It can be used both ways, but we've really positioned ourselves as the trusted source of data that powers all of your procurement technology. And that could mean also financial, contract, et cetera. So that whoever is using technology from a consumer of data can use the same valid, good information about their suppliers, whatever system that they choose to use or the organization have in place. And that's something that's quite foreign because each of those systems typically have data that lives in silos. And so suddenly when you're taking a vendor master, we had a large pharma company, for example, with 200,000 suppliers. So that's what their global vendor master, which is where all their supplier information reside, usually in the financial system. One, it doesn't give a lot of insight into what these suppliers do beyond what you're paying them for. And so you don't have a lot of context, not a lot of relevance. The information is not easily accessible by people. Like you wouldn't have an employee go to ERP to try to find information. And even if they did, it's not particularly useful to make decisions. And so you end up with having, not a lot of visibility. And then often you also end up with having a lot of duplication and messy data that's not up to date. And so the ability to turn the light on, right? To your 200,000 suppliers globally, to know who they are, what they do, how they should be categorized, what makes them similar not to one another. So you can actually start seeing where you have pockets of companies who do exactly the same thing. And they may be a lot of good reasons why you have so many. And then you may also see that there's some categories where you don't have as many suppliers. But in the world, in the bigger outside of your own organization, there's a lot of similar companies that you're not doing business with that potentially are more innovative or more competitive. And so just having that insight is incredibly powerful. Most of our clients would also be able to know that they actually don't have 200,000 suppliers. They may only have 110,000 because there's so much duplication, people putting names the wrong way. And so if you take it from the buy side perspective, from an organization, if you don't have visibility into your supply base, then you're not able to take action. You're not able to be strategic, right, to your organization to say where there's areas of opportunities or areas of risk or areas that we could, you know, either consolidate or open to the market. So that's one big thing. And then what you end up having is people, right, in the company, that it's a brand manager or someone in regulatory or R&D, is that, you know, for every time they need a supplier today in antiquated ways, you know, there's a lot of friction. Actually, we did a survey that was over 240 hours by the time you have a business need to having that supplier onboarded into your system for you to do your job. It's crazy. And we did a survey in April that it takes 21 days on average to validate and onboard a supplier. So you've already done the RFP, you now have to do diligence and onboard them, and up to 4 days just to change and update a record on who you do business with. So all of this doesn't work. Post-COVID, it didn't work before, but post-COVID, now you've got people that need to make decisions like this. And so procurement is being pushed. It was already being pushed by executives to think, how do you build procurement in a more agile way? But now it's like, you need to access the information. People need to make decisions. And if you can't enable that, you're kind of getting in the way. And people need to have access to that information in a way that they can take action on and you know, while mitigating risk, not putting their company, you know, in trouble. So they need access to trusted data to drive those decisions. And so agility is top of mind. I think most, you know, when you're responding and you need to find alternative supplies or shift your production, or, you know, still look for more innovative ways to get more airtime with your customers, or be able to find your patients and find partners that can help you, or you need to compete now with companies where it's being thrown a ton of money to do research for COVID. So suddenly you don't have access to the same CMOs or CROs, or you're maybe not the biggest player. And so, I mean, and right, there's a lot of impact, even having access to PPEs in your lab to be able to protect your employees who are doing research. Suddenly there's no more N95 masks or medical masks or gloves or things like that, and you're unsure of who and where to buy from. So those are all day-to-day impacts of the business that it just needs to be solved. It needs to happen like it happens every day for us on the consumer side.
So I'd like to actually linger on a few key concepts that you've shared there, because I think that there's certainly something to be said about digital transformation as it relates to the actual procurement, the actual procurement teams within these life science companies, or basically any companies that you're working with. But in our particular case, we deal mostly with life science. And then I'm going to want to talk a little bit about some of the advantages as it relates to the suppliers. But as it relates specifically to procurement, suddenly they're in this situation. They might be coming from a little bit more of a legacy or traditional model where they're going onto, Google, and they're looking for things all over the place and spending endless hours with fragmented pieces of information. What would be the steps that you would suggest that a procurement team would follow to be able to consolidate a very interoperable system and be able to socialize something brand new for them to incorporate? What messages would they use with their internal teams? And what sort of suggestions would you give them to onboard a single digital platform that can be leveraged by them and the rest of the organization?
So a couple of things. I do think the world of procurement is actually going towards more of an integrated, best-in-breed digital system. So it's not sort of one best-in-class, but multiple. And those systems require data. And so one thing is that you need to have your data figured out first before you start integrating a lot of different technologies. Or if you already have a lot of technologies, you need to adopt a data foundation so that you can start making that data flow automated and good for the organization. So that's one thing. I think for procurement, if you can be able to build a business case, and we have a lot of tools to help you do that, to be able to have that strong data foundation, that visibility, and then identify the first key immediate win, right? It could be leadership, it could be within your stakeholders. What are they trying to accomplish? And what are you going to focus that initial messaging of having a new data foundation and why you need to invest in it, but also why does that matter to them? If they're using our interface, so an example, it would be, I'm trying to think of, there's a lot of different examples, but so a great win for a company. So yesterday I was talking to a procurement team. There's three main priorities. Was one, savings. That's one thing right now. A lot of CFOs are sharpening their pens and are asking procurement to find savings opportunities, especially if the business was impacted negatively by COVID. Second thing was sustainability. Consumers are getting a lot more sensitive to where products are from. And that localization of building a supply chain locally is like a huge trend. So we were seeing it with Brexit already, where you would build a supply chain in each country that you operate in. So having a sustainable, supply chain is a top priority for a lot of organizations. And their third priority was to still consolidate. They have 60,000 suppliers globally, and the CEO said, out loud, they need to consolidate this to 20,000 suppliers. So those are three great priorities that a technology like Tealbook can address. One, savings. We had just in one single sourcing event, we had someone in the business at a pharma company that was using this specialized type of piping. And, they had been using that same supplier for a while, and the category manager, the procurement employee, wanted to help to see if there's maybe an opportunity to drive value and drive some negotiation points. And the business said, there's no one else in the world that can do this specialized type of piping. And we hear this all the time. This is something that if you're in procurement, you're going to smile. And the ability for that category manager to pick up their phone and be able to type in the type of piping and seeing that there's 6 companies relevant to their industry that look like they could be potential option, allowed that category manager to be more consultative to the stakeholders, to say, hey, you know what, there's 6 companies that look like they could do the same thing. Do you mind if we invite them just to make sure we're getting the most value? And suddenly you've changed the conversation from the business saying, this is the only way it is, to you not having the answer to say, like, actually, there's other options. And that category manager in that conversation was able to positively influence that discussion, go to bid, and they end up saving $25 million to the business. And especially if that money can be repurposed by the business, and that's a big topic between procurement and the business. Like if I do savings, I lose my budget. That's not so attractive. But if I can use that budget to invest in something else for my business, to drive my business forward, that's a lot more attractive. So there's some trade-off there. But if the CFO says we need to save, $20 million, and you come in and you save $25 million in one single event, and the business is still able to meet their objectives, it's a win-win for both parties. So those are some, really tangible examples of how you can drive value. And then on the business front, I think it's to be able to, there's a lot of times where the business just doesn't know or doesn't have the time. If they're spending the time Googling and searching for suppliers and calling multiple suppliers, they're probably not using their time as effectively as possible. If they go to procurement and procurement takes 6 weeks or 9 weeks or 12 weeks to come back with a qualified list, and maybe even when you see the list, you're like, I don't know if I would have chose those suppliers. Right? There's a lot of lost credibility, as opposed to having, your stakeholders saying, hey, I trust that my category manager, my procurement peer has access to the information. They're going to manage the process for me. They're going to involve me in the process and my team, make sure we have the best possible option, and we can expedite this process and do my job with the best possible supplier. You've got a huge win-win. And that's what good procurement is. And the future of procurement, where we're hearing, I've heard the CPO from Cisco saying, actually, good procurement is where employees don't even know procurement exists. Right? Like it's so enabled, it's so accessible, but for that, you need to have a full digitized procurement function, and without data, you can't do it.
Yeah, so I want to just talk a little bit about process moving forward and sort of breaking some of the norms and thinking about how things can be done in the future? Because you mentioned something that's really important, and that is the strategic component of procurement, which is category sourcing and categorical ways of looking at this. Now we're looking at a very different world today. We're talking about consultations happening between healthcare providers and patients through telemedicine. We're talking about completely different things. We're talking about everybody scrambling to the table, looking to develop, a COVID-19 vaccine. There are new methodologies and how people are doing work through, things like, teleconferences and all sorts of other things. And in addition, what people are doing in terms of selling in the life sciences spaces, is there going to be a rethinking about what the field representative is doing and saying and what they're leveraging? And what tool sets are going to be available internally to be able to execute properly in terms of sales or research or manufacturing. So with all of that said, how can things be done differently just from a methodology standpoint around category management and how that's looked at and developed for the new normal?
So, and there's a lot to unpack there, and I'm sure we could spend all day talking on some of the points you just made. I think so for category management, you need to have visibility to your categories. I think if you don't have visibility to your categories, then it's really hard to develop a strategy. And so that's understanding, suppliers who are providing value that are, and traditionally procurement would choose when they consolidate, they're looking at a category, they're looking at spend, because that's the visibility they have, is how much money are they spending with the suppliers, and then risk. How risky are they to the organization? That's where they spend their time, because they just don't have the resources or time to spend on all suppliers. And what you often forget, actually one of the igniter of Tealbook was I was sitting at a large pharma company with a marketing director or VP marketing who wanted me to introduce me to this amazing startup and that drove a ton of value for a brand. It was a small company, great guy she'd known for a long time, and then she spent 10 minutes looking for their business card and a binder. And when she found it, she gave it to me. She says, give it back so that I don't lose their contact information. And at the time, the organization was trying to consolidate their supply base by 50%. They had hired Accenture that spent millions of dollars. And they're only doing it by looking at categories, which they had to manually categorize suppliers, which is crazy. You can do this all automated today. And they were doing it based on spend and risk, because they had no additional insight from this VP of marketing, right, who had this information about this amazing supplier that drove value. So if you think about that, that's really paralyzing team to make better decisions on categories that are potentially full of opportunities that they just can't see.
And so Stephany, I just want to interrupt you there, because what's really important here, and again, I'm speaking as a supplier, as I'm trying to get to that point as well, is that we're in a new world. So there's old categories, but as we all know, there's you don't know what you don't know. So for example, there's a whole other category, like again with the FDA, that actually had to expand their categories to start including prescriptive digital therapeutics as an example. So how do we actually start instilling knowledge base and ability to expand the traditional categories with people who do traditional things?
Well, so I think it's having access to information. I think from a supplier perspective, so if you go back to that story, that's amazing supplier that did amazing things for this brand, that's a startup that probably doesn't have the resources to be all over the place to do BD. How are they building their business, right? It's word of mouth, it's knocking on the door. And even within the same company, I guess you can leverage the fact you may have a contract, but you still have to, it's the groundwork to do business development is really hard. And there's less and less, time, especially that you can't meet people in person. So you have to find really creative ways to get in front of the right buyer. Like we're talking about the physician sort of getting voice of the customer that way, but as a supplier, how are you getting, how are you able to advocate for yourself? How are you able to share the wins that you have with customers so that more customers get to see it? That's what we, with our technology, we ignite by having a universal supplier record of your company. You're able to maintain the information about that company. You're also able to highlight the things that you're doing to your social media. You're able to post news feed. You're able to add who your customers are and how you're creating value for those customers. And what we're doing when we're looking at what makes companies, suppliers similar to one another, we're also looking at buyers. So if you're able to start entering who your customers are and start tagging yourself or being able to start posting about your company, what we call is building your social currency. And so now you've got a way where by building your social currency, our algorithms will start positioning you in front of customers that are most alike your customers. And so we're looking at relevance in the categories or relevance in the types of companies. Is it small biotech? Is it large pharma? Is it Europe? Is it US? Is it, and so that, it doesn't eliminate all your BD effort, but it positions you to be in front of our customers in a more relevant way so that customers trust that when you're being put in front of them, that there's something there that they should be paying attention to. They can stay updated on your progress or your news. You can start sharing some of your wins in front of those customers that are looking for innovation. And that gives you now a platform to be able to grow your BD in a much smarter, much more efficient and more relevant way. And so that's what, we're building on the supplier side, is that opportunity and giving the buyer more relevance, more trust when they're searching for something. They may not know exactly what they're searching for, but when they're searching, that companies that come up, it's all the information is there, it's trusted, they can see the relevance, then they can contact you to dig more. So how does that, relate to their business? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's actually excellent. So really what we were talking about here is that Tealbook is trying to hit things from two sides of the equation. So on the one side, making it really easy and simple to be able to do searches from the procurement standpoint, both the people at the front line and the category strategists, but also the other side, which is the supplier side. How do I get in and get some visibility? But I still want to speak a little bit about process, because there's still traditional and then the potential opportunity of where Tealbook fits into the process. Now the typical process is that there's really different on-road, on-ramps and off-ramps, right? So there's multiple ways to skin the cat. So one of the things that you're talking strongly about are people who are doing a proactive search. So somebody who's got the luxury of time, who are starting to plan in advance what they're going to be doing in 2021 or 2022 and what's kind of out there, and let me do this strategic, wonderful thing. And then, that's one potential on-ramp. But then there's the other one that we know that probably takes the majority. Brian Halligan from HubSpot calls this the flywheel process, as opposed to, the marketing funnel, which is it's the more people that the faster it goes. And, that's actually really what your marketing plan is for a supplier. Is that the more people in that organization that use you, the more it's going to happen. So there's the proactive side from the category management, and then there's the other one, which is, hey, backdoor, so-and-so is really great. Let's just go and do an RFI with 2 or 3 other people just to say we did, and I really want to use this person. So tell us a little bit about what that looks like as it relates to Tealbook. Does it break that protocol or process? Does it enhance it? Does it augment it, or does it change that?
That's a good question. So if a company uses our interface, it becomes their social media. Like the LinkedIn analogy is really good because it gives you a profile per supplier. It gives you your Rolodex. The Tealbook was sort of your book of suppliers that digitize in a way that the information is constantly enhanced and available to you. And so when our customers are using Tealbook for the purpose of collaboration, for the purpose of sharing information in real time with teams globally, I mean, it opens a highway of information about suppliers that in traditional ways, you exchange notes in the bathroom or the water cooler. As now, if you want to know, who's doing digital online meetings, you can just click digital. You're going to see the companies. You can see the ones you work with, the one by spend, by relationship. Did they have an MSA? You can also see the people that they're connected to. You can see how they've been tagged. If there's any notes, are their proposal uploaded? You can even click on that person to see where they work, what's their position within the company, because they may be in a different country, so you've never met them. You can even chat with that person. You can add a contact of the supplier. You can connect with a contact of the supplier. So if there's any changes, you're updated on their news feed or any change, or you can contact and chat with them directly. So it eliminates a lot of that traditional sort of back and forth and word of mouth and having to do a lot of calls to figure out who do we work with or who's out there in the market that, could potentially be a really good value add. So the knowledge of your peers and that connection in Tealbook is really tremendous. We call it community data. the more you're known, the more you're connected within the organization or within your industry, the more relevant, the more trusted you become. And so when someone is searching or comes across your company, and looks at, you have, 30 connections internally, maybe the organization has spent money with you on what, or maybe not yet, but they can see that there's a lot of connections. So then there's a lot more trust and relevance already just by the fact that you're connected. You can see how many customers they have in Tealbook. They've got 16 or 30 pharma and biotech clients. So now there's a comfort, there's a trust, there's a relevance. So it does still require the supplier to be connected. It does require to do still some business development, effort, but now you can enhance that significantly by having information in the hands of buyers. So an example, J&J is actually using Tealbook for mostly to connect with small and diverse businesses, to be able to report their small and diverse businesses with more accuracy, because we cover 100% of small and diverse businesses. And at a conference, they all had our app right on their iPads. So the whole team from J&J was in the booth, and they're at this small diversity conference, and all the suppliers that would come, they would line up at the booth to introduce themselves. Well, instead of taking a business card and say, thank you so much, and if there's interest, someone's going to call you, and then someone goes into the spreadsheet at the end of the conference, and God knows who does it and where does it go. Well, in that conversation alone, that procurement, or even it was non-procurement employees in the booth, were able to say, hey, is this your company? Yeah. And then all the information is pre-populated. So as a supplier, you don't have to go in and enter information. It's already created, all grabbed from publicly available information. You may see something that's not accurate, or data is getting better and more complete, but it's possible that you saw something that's maybe not quite accurate. Well, it costs nothing. It takes you seconds to go and fix it. You can enhance it. You can even go and validate that your certificate are in fact valid. That increases your credibility. And what the employee at J&J would say is, like, now that we're connected, I'm following you. I've tagged you based on our conversation, what you do. You're now connected to every employee at J&J. And they can see that you and I are connected. So if they have questions, or they want to know how we met, I've added notes, and also they can contact me directly here. But not only that, there's 16 other pharma and biotech companies using Tealbook that can also access you. And now, because I tagged you, it gives you more credibility and more relevance to all these other companies. That's a really powerful statement. So that just in that one conversation, now you've completely, and you basically put your BD on steroids. Now, it doesn't guarantee you new business, but it puts you in front of thousands of buyers of pharma and biotech companies. So if they're proactively looking for your information, or they're searching, or they come across your company, they have now a place that they can see information, and it gives them an element of trust or knowledge about you. They can connect you. So if they need you in the future, they can, just by tagging you or adding you to one of their own personal lists, they can just, quick cheat sheet back to you very quickly, instead of having to dig into a binder.
So that's actually very, very helpful. And so, with all of that said, again, there's something in it for the manufacturer, or the procurement department, and there's something for the suppliers. Part of this process, as we look through the procurement process, when we're actually sourcing and trying to find options, we actually all have to go through, that's probably part of the RFI process, but then there's the actual part where you're interviewing and listening. It's almost like people coming in, if you're looking at being a startup company, going in and trying to seek funding. Like, you actually have to get in front, you've been pre-selected, you're the top 3 people, and now you have to pitch. How does Tealbook modify or change, shorten or enhance, lengthen, or whatever you want to call it, that part of the process? Does that level of due diligence still take place with the same immensity, the same timeframes, or is there a shortcut based on the fact that Tealbook has made the request for information a little simpler and a little easier? Do we still, how are we seeing the actual getting in front of? And now, because of COVID-19, and we don't know how long this is going to happen, and if protocols around being in person is going to modify forever, how do you suggest that companies build trustability when it's all being done virtually this way? So it's kind of a multi-pronged question, but really in essence is, what is the pitch going to look like in the future, and how do we build trust when it isn't going to be getting in front of people anymore, especially if you're a new company?
Well, the traditional process of sourcing is 7 steps. and it requires 240 something plus hours. So, and it's a huge time and money commitment from suppliers. As you know, companies would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to go to an RFP, and it's a huge letdown when you don't win. And there's only one company that wins. And you know, I think there's some companies that are more empathetic about how much to ask for suppliers, right, in that process, because it's such a huge investment. So I think there's a few things that can be mitigated with data. One, you know, when you're searching for suppliers as a buyer, to be able to find suppliers that are more aligned and make sure that you considered all your options at first is really important. And then we do have an RFI engine as part of our interface, so you can quickly look for suppliers. You can look at more information about them. You can build your list. You can invite your peers internally to collaborate on that list. You can ask the requirements that you want, and then you go through a pre-qualification process. And so say it's something very specific that you need out of those suppliers, either X amount of experience, you can put your critical requirements. When you send that out, we have all the contact information built in Tealbook. As a buyer, you're now saving 90% time and effort and getting a response from suppliers. And then you're getting the suppliers that meet your requirements, because they do need to check the list that they meet all the requirements. So now you've basically have gone from a bigger funnel to smaller funnel of companies who meet the requirements, who have agreed in the terms that they do meet the requirements. And as a supplier, you get a chance, you know, now that you've been put in front of a buyer that's more likely a buyer that's good for you, that's more aligned and similar to your existing customers. And now you've seen all the requirements that you've said yes to. If you lie about it, it's on you, because then you're going to probably have a chance to lose the business or get in trouble. But if you say, yes, I meet all those requirements, this is good business for me, you're much more inclined to want to put in the time, right, and the investment, knowing that this is a potentially really good lead. And then so the buyers now narrow down their list, and they're able to move through that process faster. When you're looking at RFPs, I'd say out of the 500 questions usually that RFPs come through, I'd say 90% could be solved by having access to the data. If the buyer had access to all the information about your company up front, the relevance, the certification, the contact information, your revenue, your size, the type of customers you have, all of that could be answered up front. Then you just focus on how your company can meet those requirements. You're not now, no, yes, you're going to introduce your organization and you're going to make sure that you've got a rapport and the chemistry and all that is there. But now you've eliminated a lot of the kind of the stuff that you just repetitively have to include into RFPs. And so it gives buyer access to all this information. And then on the onboarding, just the exchange of documents as you're going through the contract, just to get onboarded, you're losing an enormous amount of time to get paid and start doing the job. And so if the buy side is able to access all the record, because all your record is now available into your profile, and they're able to start onboarding you faster, it's a win-win for both. You get paid faster, you start getting the work faster, and you're able to spend more time, you know, more resources on moving on to other deals. And so I think there's a lot of stuff in there, but it's about making all of that more efficient. And the inefficiencies of those processes were all built because information needed to be gathered over and over and over again, even within the same organization, even within the same suppliers, because information it's just not unified. It just lives everywhere.
So just out of curiosity, this sounds, this sounds wonderful, and it's sort of like, how does everybody get signed up? But as we all know, everything is a bell curve. So what do you see, over the past, little while, what has been some of the reasons or the challenges for some of the adoption issues? Why are some people faster than others? Is there concerns about interoperability? Is there questions about cost? Or are there questions or concerns deep down inside that some of the procurement people feel like they might be become redundant or not needed anymore? Is there concerns about job security? What have been some of the adoption challenges, and how have you helped some of these teams overcome those?
Yeah, I think our bell curve at the beginning, we're probably a bit too early for the market. Like 5 years ago, I'd heard chief procurement officers say that they would never put their data in the cloud, right? Or like, I don't even know if they have a job, but they're certainly, I'm sure, putting data in the cloud. So it's not that long ago. And then what we saw is a movement of all these procure to pay and source to pay, the Arebas, Coupas, Jagger, iValue, all of them coming out with some really good digital transformation stories. Right, they did talk about a good digitization of the function and having a solution to solve for data. And when I speak at conferences today, I ask 3 questions. One, raise your hand if you have some confidence in the quality and the completeness of your supplier data today. And everyone laughs. Everyone looks around, right? And then I asked, raise your hand if you believe that good quality data is absolutely critical to your digital transformation. 100% of them raise their hands and say, here's, who has invested in a cloud-based S2P or P2P software in the last couple of years? And you get 3/4 because it's still a growing market. And I think it just lands itself incredibly well. And it was really painful for us to watch because we had this solution now that if you added Tealbook to your implementation of S2P or P2P software, the uptime would be faster. You'd cover 100% of your supplier's data. You would have a way to automatically populate the data to your software and maintain it. Like, it's a no-brainer, but because, they were sold a really good story. And I remember meeting a bank and saying, here's 10 really basic questions about your supplier, like really basic. How many suppliers do you have? Like, who are your preferred suppliers? What categories do you have? And they couldn't answer. And they said, well, we just got our cloud-based S2P software, and that's going to solve. We're going to have answers to these questions. And a year later, they still don't have answers to the questions because it doesn't solve for data. Software companies are not data companies. And so I think that was a bit, the early adopters saw use cases. I can use Tealbook to do supplier discovery. That's an outcome of having so much data and building algorithms that look at 300 different dimensions of what makes suppliers similar or not to another. We built algorithms that find similar suppliers to incumbents in seconds, or instantly. And so, finding supplier discovery was a use case. So our clients would, there was a budget allocated to doing supplier discovery. Same with supplier diversity. Companies are investing a lot of time and money and cleansing their data, mapping it out, grabbing certificates from diverse suppliers, having to validate those manually and report it. We can now do this in real time with accuracy. It's a one-click report. It's like life-changing for the diversity community. So we were coming across as a nice to have, lots of benefit, but if you've invested millions of dollars in these systems and you believe it's going to solve for your data, then Tealbook became, if you thought of Tealbook as a software or digital solution, it became a nice to have with resolving different use cases. And it was hard to comprehend how it's going to solve my data problem. And a big shift we did last year is actually re-articulate what we are as a company. We are a big data company. We are the data foundation that powers all of your systems. And that's what got us market traction, because then it fits with a digital transformation budget. There's a lot of investment in software that are at stake. They are failing. Gartner says 75% of IT projects will fail because of poor data. And now with COVID, that's expedited significantly. All the topics about, supply chain visibility and data is like, it's a huge priority for the CEO, for the CFO. And so it's getting a lot more attention. And so I think it's a combination of us seeing the market, adapting of how we sell, how we come across, doing a reshift. That reshift felt like G-force to us and our customers. And suddenly the market is changing and it's coming to a place where actually, we were in a situation where we thought we had invested in all this technology. We couldn't still not react fast enough. We're still paralyzed, right? Now we may be recovering, but wow, that was painful. Now we need contingency planning and risk mitigation planning and tools to be able to take action on those, not just about knowing it, but reacting to it.
So I'm just going to use a theoretical example. So let's just say, for example, I'm a brand new or relatively new blockchain company. Okay. First of all, most category managers are going to have no idea what blockchain even is, right? But you've got this fascinating, fabulous new tool, especially in light of the November 23rd, 2020 FDA requirement, which is basically the Drug Supply Chain Security Act that's coming through, where you're going to be looking for, counterfeit products and all these things. And using blockchain or a technology company that can help with that is a huge, huge save. First of all, what recommendations would you have for, first of all, allowing people to understand that there are these kinds of companies? Secondly, for these kinds of companies to get in, some of these novel, and I'm just sort of scratching the surface. There's tons of companies, including mine, that brings virtual advisory boards. A lot of people didn't even know asynchronous even exists. And then secondly, what is the business model? Somebody who might be starting and up and running, they might not be able to pay for this kind of expensive software. So how do we kind of manage this particular scenario?
It's a big question, right? It's a question that as I build my company, I think about every day. So I think on the buy side, if it's an executive. If it's not an executive, I think that finding, if you're excited about technology, if you're seeing some problems in your organization that are in line with the priority of your executive, so don't, try to fight the right fight. But if you understand those and you can find solutions to that, maybe it's something that's committed to shareholders, like there's a huge savings target, or there's a big focus right now on the sustainability issues, right? Or anyway, whatever the goals are, align with that, look for solutions, and then build their business case. And the startup companies or whoever companies you're working with can help you do that. I think that's really important. And for those companies that are selling into the enterprise, it's hard. Enterprise selling is hard. I mean, we sell the procurement, like that's you can sell technology as a procurement, like you can basically sell anything, because it's hard to build the business case, because often procurement teams don't always own the budget, and so they have to then build a business case for someone to pay for it. That becomes quite difficult, and so you have to really attach yourself to a strong use case, and a startup needs to understand that. If you're selling a technology, of course, we do sell the holy grail of having a one source of truth, having this data foundation, but you don't start there, right? You start with something that it's the how. Okay, here's all the list of benefits that you get from having a data foundation, and the use cases are endless. But let's start with the 2 or 3 that are most important to the organization. And then let's focus on that. And what does it really identify what good looks like? And if you can do it in a pilot environment, or on maybe one category or with one team, so that you can prove the value, it's much easier to then for the champion internally to go in and try to expand, the initiative, more broadly. I mean, unless you're targeting the chief procurement officer, and we have some really, really strong champions and chief procurement officers who believed in us from the beginning. They just saw that this needed to be resolved. It needs to be agnostic. It needs to be automated. It needs to be self-enriching. It needs to cover even more data points on our suppliers, but we need this. But others were just harder to convince, or just couldn't see it, because either they're just thinking about their traditional way of the playbook and what you do in procurement. And that's just hard for people sometimes to wrap their head around new technology and how it enables it. But finding kind of really practical, and Karen who's listening on the call, was my head of PR. I would say, like, give examples, because people relate to stories and examples that are real and tangible. If you can do that as a startup company, tell real stories, and we're really, really focused on that. Like, what's the speed to ROI to our customers, and how do we tell those stories so that our customers can hear more and more about them, and it makes it, a lot more tangible. It makes it more real for them. It makes it easier.
Beautiful. So we only have a couple of minutes left. So how would you, in a high-level way, summarize what's next for Tealbook?
We're super excited. I mean, we've more than doubled our pipeline in the last 10 weeks, right? So for us, it's been definitely an upside. We've been able to serve hundreds of companies. We offered a free supplier report when COVID hit. That was the ability for my team to pivot, put something together, and execute beautifully. Karen, who got us a lot of media attention, we were listed, last week we had an article, the editor's pick in Forbes, that's the supply chain manufacturing lead. Like, the amount of visibility we've got in the last 10 weeks is really, really exciting. And I think a lot of partnership, a lot of software companies are recognizing adding a data element to their offering would add tremendous value to their clients. And so, we're just executing right now. We've got the money in the bank. We've got a great team. We've got the market on our side. And we just, we're on a roll.
Love it. And how can people find you? If anybody either on the supplier side or on the buying side are interested in learning more about Tealbook, how can they find you?
So it's tealbook.com. So for suppliers, it's free. It takes seconds to go look at your profile. You can see some insight that becomes more and more interesting as you engage with Tealbook. So go in and clean your tags, make sure that all your offerings are there, your contact information is up to date. If you have any certification, if it's not already pre-populated, add them with expiration date, add your list of customers, so then our algorithms will start understanding who you do business with. And we always welcome feedback. We're spending a lot of time right now relooking at the supplier experience. On the buy side, the benefit is suppliers don't have to come to Tealbook for you to get value and get the insight and get the records. If they come, it helps but it makes it sort of more enhanced, but you don't rely on most portals. If you have a lot of portals, you know, I think one of the assumptions is that portal will solve a data problem. They just don't, because suppliers have too many portals to update, and it's just, you know, it's just a lot of effort. And so anyway, so on the buy side, if you're interested, we have a section on our website, tealbook.com. You can request a conversation with one of our account executive or solutions consultant if you want to schedule a demo. And
beautiful. And I just want to, I want to also say that we're also one of the suppliers on Tealbook. Love it. It's super simple to use. This is our invitation to go back in there and check our updates, but absolutely love the software, and recommend anybody who's listening to this, check it out. I wanted to let everybody know as well too that this has been a significant conversation. These are timely and important, and we just want to remind everybody as well too that these are some of the kinds of conversations that are going to start changing the world, starting to change the way we do things, the way we think about things, the way we sort of disrupt some of the legacy ways and methodologies that we've always been doing what we've been doing. If you're looking at trying to have some of these strategic conversations internally with your partners, with your suppliers, Impetus actually provides some of the best asynchronous and synchronous tools to be able to have these big, hairy, audacious conversations. Everything starts with a thought, and we'd love to have a discussion with you on that. So please come out and check out some of our previous Fireside chats, you know, on our company blog, or you can subscribe to our newsletter. Follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And we also have a new
Tealbook. And Tealbook. I know you guys are actively posting on Tealbook.
And Tealbooks. And we actually have a podcast as well on Buzzsprout. So look for the link to this video for any of your colleagues who were not able to see Stephany, hear all about the fantastic things that Tealbook is doing. Please send them to the link. We'll be sending that afterwards, as well as being able to add in her company's website and her LinkedIn profile in the description on our YouTube channel as well. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Stephany, for a fantastic conversation, and wishing everybody a wonderful day ahead.
Thank you, Natalie. It was great seeing you again.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.